Hello fellow gamers, and welcome to Game Developers Essentials Lessons Book. Today on GDELB, we're going to be continuing the discussion on the red car law and how it affects gaming concepts, mechanicals, and journalistical natures of desert biomes. But first, a closer look at the meta-narrative of the new gaming experience from the titular developers, Nordic Interactive Software, and their controversial crown jewel, Anthem. Anthem learns to teach its lessons by supporting the ideas of judicial simplification, which is a professional term, but I can break it down for you. Judicational sampling is the idea that a free society does not impinge on the actual taxing benefits of localized source bankers, but that is not what we've been told. Arguably, Anthem's non-direct cyclical gameplay flow conveniently makes the most money as possible. These are lopsided story objectives, and to course correct, they created awful pacing from area to area. And believe me, you wouldn't want that if you understood what it meant. And as the great Bindo Bagfind once said, Anthem feels thin, like bread spread across too much butter. But today's focus will be on the effect of Anthem on society, the way in which it has changed our streamlining of interface iterational soft blanking. That is a more archaic programming term, and if you are one of the people who are unaware of it, then perhaps you should realize that your comments contradict themselves and function as a self-righteous get-out-of-discussion free card. So please read history, because ultimately I am a proud member of the intellectual gaming community founded by Captain Tonald Loke. I would appreciate it if you would recognize my authority and respect it, because ultimately, again, I get more views on GDELB episode 1 in any single minute of any single day that passes by than anyone in the lower class has been listened to for their entire lives. They are disgusting. But going back to Far Cry, we can realize that perspectives as a whole have been given proper revolution. We no longer blindly stumble in video game layout menus, we proudly explore. And through exploration and critical, deductive, intelligent, smart reasoning, blind subservience has been eradicated. But what is blind subservience? For a simple understanding, think of it as the cooked grenade of racing games, or some other perceptively anodyne prosaic collaborationalized statement. As Vernon Sig Willis once wrote during his press conference of 2019, "Ye old world be changing. Children runneth the ramparts, the breast of the woketh lain bare, and the sullied build the milketh, meat and ivory of the Pacificated Norine, as she dribble plentif on the moor of the Dugara." This disproves objective art analysis, and those who don't see it probably haven't heard of neutral species malnutrition. But to understand that, we would have to approach the controversial subject of siphon clogging. What is siphon clogging? Well, as Bindo Bagfind did say, old games are not new games, even if you were the same age when you played them. And some of these single-player games are the best. They have a huge more excellent approach to a video gaming. It's fine if you don't know about it, but you must consider that pressing a button more than a singular time can result in a multivariance verb intake, or, as the lower class discuss it, the double jump. But who created the double jump? And why? The double jump was originally founded in video games such as Fester's Quest, the critically acclaimed masterpiece from the intellectual gaming community supervisor, director and chieftain, Tonald Loke, though it is sad that many fanboys raged out on Fester's Quest when it's just a game about dungeon warlocks for children. As a result, many are asking who Fester is and what his quest was, but nobody is asking how Fester is. This is a prompt, particularly evident throughout Pokemon's Ramon. The emphasis of his points do not reflect the points that are of interest to the audience. The potential flaws are incredulously tangential in nature, which is the crux of the argument. did Anthem fail? Well, that is subjective, because it is implied by the basics of communication, and anyone who digresses will be self-righteous. I'm not being stubborn here, I'm just right. Real interpretive communities are made up of those who share interpretive strategies, not for reading in the conventional sense, but for writing a text. Deft ecological response theorem is for constituting their properties and assigning their intentions. Please read history. But what does this have to do with Red Dead Redemption 2? Anthem is fairly maligned, but there is aspects that nobody is talking about. The first being telekinetic visualization as an extensive rebrand of psychonautilic effluence framing, proving definitively that our little centrist boy isn't a pro-gamer after all. And of course, we want the protagonist to win, otherwise the bad guys do instead. And we don't want that. The second being graphics. We need graphics in games, otherwise we can't see. The third and final element is the Holy Flood thesis, joining the narrative tripling and subsequent disagreement that there is any factual basis to the truth that he is wrong, but because there's simple, authentic observation, there is no objective truth. And, here's the thing. I fucking love Canto Bight. It supports me every day. It brings us all together like fun-loving geniuses, and frankly, the fact that it criticised capitalism means that we probably are fun-loving geniuses. It's saving people's lives, representing wonderful, diverse perspectives, which are probably going to have long-lasting effects long after we forget the movie itself. Overall, I would be huge more unhappy if people found a way to remove Canto Bight from every copy of The Last Jedi it was ever in. And on that note, if it is new, it is better, as proven in the two latest works by Icelandic author Isradine Lutetia Hlerp. The first being a fascinating tale of woe in a world set very far in the future, a science fiction drama built by the backdrop of a futuristic world set in the distant future, in which you get to look at woman, this taking place at the back of a society that determines your social status by hair length. The second being a sort of social commentary on the state of video game culture, a deep look into the impenetrable forests that surrounds discussion on a pneumatic cognitive level. Many, including the late great Bindo Bagfind, will argue that these books are objectively without value because they sell toys. And while that is true, they have fallen for the obvious trap. Actual audio, visual, auto, sub-genres. I know this is a subject that's been talked to death, but this is important. The slimy veneer of quasi-empiricism can be a very disgusting tool for nefariously slipping in one's own rotten viewpoint or value, one that you know might otherwise be challenged as torturistically superlative, or perhaps you think that war is just peace with more steps, you dirty, disgusting racializer. The simple fact is that microtransactions and loot boxes do not affect the game. They only determine whether the players will win, and that is a small price to pay if you want to succeed, which is ultimately the only thing that really, truly, genuinely, properly, legitimately matters. But going back to Apex Legends, MOBAs were not strictly built upon the foundation of first-person shooters. This is proven when looking at what is one of the most tightly held secrets of the genre. Pushing the aim button through a lot of devilish programming and thumb gymnastics allows the player character to aim at increased accuracy. That feels objectively like the only natural outcome when combining those verbs. It all makes sense. But before you post any comments, just remember, we're all people, no matter how massive we may be. So why was I wrong about Anthem? Well, People get older as time goes on, and if history is implied, then why can the very same species of video game be created despite the fandom of Goblin Alliance also claiming that the fourth entry in the series was a brand new and functional direction to take? As my uncle always used to say, provide an argument that is based on evidence and uses a logical through line to prove a point. But that doesn't make any sense. And besides, Kylo Ren was my favourite character in Rogue One. The film was genuinely properly great. There were real spooks, genuine spooks, and it was an actual horror. Because if you die in a movie, then it is no longer a movie, and you can't die a second time because it's a movie. In my opinion. I will put out a review for Rogue One as soon as I finish the second half of it, so stop asking about it. You are arguing in bad faith. You never change your mind. You believe that something else is happening outside of reality, and hell, I guess I should just start every sentence with, please leave me alone and let me say whatever I want without being challenged or courtesized. Otherwise, you guys will continue to ask for low-level terminology. Ultimately, you were just embarrassed that I was scared by Dark Souls and you weren't. I mean, how do you not get scared when fighting the Nilonic beast of Peruda? Check out this awesome combo. Slice and dice, brother. Slice and dice. Now, when really delving deep into a game like Farming Simulator, you have to consider the graphics, the gameplay, the story, the characters, the multiplayer, the soundtrack, and the AI. Or do you? A lot of critics, including Hagrid the Hellacious, have been saying these sorts of things lately, and I feel we have missed out on something far more important. Tactile game feel. This was recently popularized by games such as Fallout 76, and the reason is old games are bad, and the developers of old games are ill-equipped to standardize smart gameplay pacing into classic games. For example, backtracking, non-scaling enemies and zones, thermal non-compliance, lack of proper save states, segregational semantic system management. A great example of this is, I don't know, Uncharted 2 for example, where its history became implied as a result of interlaced iteration. Creativity has allowed the passage of time to bring new and interesting formulas on our favourite gaming fundamentals. But that doesn't mean that Trump should be president, because these arguments ignore the presuppositional binaries of logical cognation. You only need to look at appendix fiction, which by definition does not allow stylized POVs to communicate on a higher level, or in some cases they are literal ghosts. You try to find them, you search for them, and you look for them, and you try to find them, but you can't find them, and they are empty-handed. In the great conflagration of 2018, many of us chanted, #We were there. But why were we there? Anthem is a video game that excels in modernity, but if you interpret the 6th episode as a sequel to the 5th, it can be seen as a continuation. But a film is ultimately a photogenital element dugong that pertains sonic labelling to a sense of mysteric constance. And of course, you can't forget the huge more amount of complexity in the criticism. I know it sounds complicated, but this process is called driving, and as the great elder Billman Bagel once pontificated, it is common, but not too common. I would say if you don't quite get it, then you are the critics' stupid people. Whenever you get the toxic fans coming right at you, remember to repeat this simple phrase. Intentionalized spectrum failures execute the dramatic function of logistic nightmare beasts, which is exactly how emotional response theorems are formalized. The Holy War does not just end because you think a movie about dungeon warlocks for children was bad. This also disproves objective art analysis. Though I was objectively wrong about one thing in the previous episode of GDELB, Dark Souls is not a horror game because genre does not exist. But more importantly, as user Cruelist Chris pointed out, despite reaching 38 seconds of the video essay, I failed to consider the LGBT plus implications of Duck Hunt for the NES Classic and the Antikythera mechanism present in its later levels. To make up for it, I'm going to cover it now.
Okay, now.
Anthem is a complicated game. To even understand even a pixel of its beauty, we have to study the ideas of Bilbus Pagoda and his quote, "Hammers, good or bad?" Once you evolve to level 16 as a critic, in which you receive the most obtuseness ability, you can then be honest. Anyways, guys, I have never heard a smart people say that there's no reason why any company would ever pay anyone something for. Most will only purchase a product based on its positive marketing. If there's enough controversy, then I avoid it. As a review by a white person will offer nothing when discussing Big Mama's House, as this film is not meant for you. And I would talk about that, but I do not have the space to fit it in. But the actual visual imagination, and besides, he's old, and they are conveniently as possibly to make the most money. And that's the final most insidious aspect of clamping plot hole obsessed film context culture's devaluation of thematic gourmet Nazi propaganda fish hook analysis. Context is a word that criminals use to avoid their sentencing. The court system is a puppet master in that it doesn't pull any strings. It would be the same thing as murdering your family and turning it into a flower picking simulator. Real, in-depth, nitty-gritty, perspective, prescriptive criteria for languationalized context barriers is dead on YouTube. This is because Dark Souls thinks its opinion is a fact and that everyone else's opinion is subjective. But let me ask you this. What makes Dark Souls better than subjectivity? Ultimately, even if a character doesn't have motivation, Luke and Vader were in love. They touched fingers, and Rey failed more than enough. She was sad several times. I think that all it needs saying now is simplicity was hard to strive for because the technology wouldn't allow it. It wouldn't allow you to put in systems that make it easier for gamers. So we relished in the challenge, and the obtuseness evolved the evolution of video games ecologically. I don't know if you caught my sneaky move there, but that was a direct quote from Bulbous Bunkleton himself. I suppose I will close out today's episode with a lesson. When you respond to another creator, you must not use any more than 5% of their argument. Otherwise, you do support neo-Nazism. This disproves objective critique. And to me, fully bad is when everything sucks. And so, instead of starting discourse over making your blood boil, go out and spread some love, peace, and happiness and love. But if you point out the negative traits of something, then you extract fun directly from Mother Universe, and that's objectively bad and you are failing her. But I will no longer respond to those people, as they have referred to me as a massive. I do not support wordism. I am sorry that I do not make videos much longer than 10 minutes, but it's an actual active participle choice I make. I am a chronophobe. I fear time, and I would appreciate it if you didn't time shame me. I would like to thank the YouTuber I Am Correct for proofreading this script, as the first draft had an error in it. But before I go, remember this. The film language of shot reverse shot tells you it's a film, and as a critic, I have decided to shut the door on my past. The use of force is not a good thing. Inclusionist propaganda is implied through the whiny and sad non-swagger projectionists. Hopefully that explains the mechanical nature of the red car law, but we can explore it further next episode. If you liked my video, please subscribe, it's free. If you liked my PayPal, please donate, it's free, and Patreon. Don't forget to ring that subscribe donation. Bells are for everyone and the merch store is but one click away. it's free. Audio Cloud is now offering a free shaving kit for the first 10 million signups when using code GDELB. Make sure to try out their VPN protection service and use their skill sharing programmetry to your own website creating software hardware. Make sure those hard to reach areas are easy to miss. If you're interested in in-depth analysis, please check out the previous episode of GDELB, Farming Simulators, Hidden Connection to Dark Souls, Secrets Explained, and Here's Why. GDELB. Thank you for watching. Dark Souls. Audio Cloud is now offering a free shaving kit for the